All right. And then we will, after this, we will post it on our YouTube page as well for everybody to watch. And we do have everybody on mute. If you do have a question throughout the webinar, just raise your hand or put it in the chat and we can get to that there. And today I'm here with Suki Sahoto from Now What Facilitation, who will be presenting on how to mediate disputes in sports for clubs. And Suki brings extensive experience in both facilitating training as well as working in alternative dispute resolution. So with that, I'll just hand it over to you, Suki.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Of
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see everybody this afternoon, or sorry, this evening. So like Sarah said, my name is Suki Sahota Hare, and I'm one of the workshop facilitators here at Now at BC. Before I begin, I just want to take a second and acknowledge that we are conveying today on the ancestral and unceded and shared territories of the Coast Salish people. Myself coming from North Delta, so I'm coming from the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations to you all today, and I'm really grateful that I get to live, work, and play on these lands. So today we're going to be talking about quite a bit about conflict and how can we really deal with conflict and how can we manage conflict when it comes up for us. And especially when we're talking about the concept of managing complaints, that might not be really new to all of us, but processing and addressing grievances that's existed for centuries. So we're really going to be talking about how can we manage the processes and how can we be really effective in terms of addressing the conflict that's coming up. And it's also ensuring that we're comfortable with dealing with it because conflict is tough and it's hard and it's not always something that we're ready to do. So just having a really fulsome conversation this evening about how can we walk through the process of conflict as well as complaint management. So a little bit about Now What. So to date, we've helped over 300 organizations build teams, manage conflict, and develop more effective operations through mediation services, as well as through offering these workshops very similar to this. Few things that we've learned and essentially how to make it all work is when we're talking about conflict, it's really important that we address conflict early on so that we avoid it escalating. And when we're building trust through clear and fair processes, that also allows policy procedures and group guidelines for us to kind of fall back on and to follow through with. It helps us adapt conflict resolution methods to fit the organization's culture. And it recognizes the limitations of formal complaints and the benefits of alternative dispute resolution. Now, also, it prioritizes in person or telephone communication. So, really avoiding that email or texting communication aspect. So by the end of, well, in about an hour and a half, I'm really hoping that everyone today will be able to understand the purpose and process of mediation as a collaborative tool for resolving sport-related disputes. Really hoping that everyone will gain practical skills to manage emotions, clarify issues, and guide participants towards mutually acceptable solutions. Learn a structured framework for conducting or supporting mediation processes within sports environments and strengthening a community of practice to sustain shared learning and support. Now, throughout the workshop, I know a few of you have your cameras turned off and a few of you have them on. I try to make this very interactive, so I will be picking on a few people throughout the process or throughout our workshop. I have quite a bit of questions and some group work, so hopefully everyone's okay with that this evening. So to jump right into everything, so we're going to be starting off by doing a little bit of connection building. We're going to be jumping into discussing the differences between disagreements and conflict. And then we're going to be talking about how can we address and how can we respond. And then I'll end off with talking a little bit about Now What services. And if anybody has questions, we'll have some time at the end. But please feel free, if questions come up for you throughout the workshop, please don't hesitate to ask. So today we're really focusing on building practical conflict management skills. So think of this like training. It really takes consistency. It's not always about the perfection. So when we're trying something new, it's typically hard at the beginning. And often we start off with a lot of enthusiasm, but it can feel really awkward at the same time. Now, we give up when, now, conflict management is really the same when we think about it. It can feel very uncomfortable at first, but staying consistent is when we see that success happen and where we see that growth happen as well. And when we're talking about, that secret sauce to preventing conflict, building connection really is that secret sauce. So when there's trust and then there's care, people are more willing to work through conflict even when it's really difficult or when it's really tough. So one thing that I'm going to ask that we all do is I would love to get to know everybody a little bit. So I'm going to ask everybody to just tell me your name and to share a time that you learned something new that you have to do. So I can start. So again, my name is Suki, and a very new thing that I've learned recently is how to garden. I have no green thumb, so there's a lot of curveballs associated with learning how to grow some garlic, but we're slowly getting there. So who'd like to go next?
I can go.
Thank you.
My name is Wanda, and I recently have taken up learning how to beekeep.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sarah, maybe I can get you to go.
Sure. Oh man, I'm trying to think of something new recently. My name is Sarah, and um, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm you stumped me, but I feel like we're learning something new every day. So
Thanks, Sarah. Maybe I can go to Diana. See, Tina and Gord have unmuted. So maybe I can ask you guys to share.
Yeah, I'm Tina, and I've just started to learn how to knit.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
And I'm Gord, and let's see, what have I done most recently? I'm teaching a group bridge.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Gord. We have Laura.
I'm Laura, and I've been learning to carriage drive.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
That's cool.
Danita. Okay. Well, thank you for those that shared. I really appreciate that. Now, it may seem silly as to why I asked you a question about something that you're recently learning to do or something that you've just learned to do. But when we take a few minutes and we try to get to know one another, or we ask each other these questions, again, that's building that trust and that's building that connection with one another. And it goes really far, and it takes us really far when it comes to dealing with conflict in the big scheme of things. So I always recommend, team meetings at workshops, before practices or before meets, having just a few minutes to get to know one another. There may be some things that you may not have known, or you may learn something new about someone. And again, it's just about building that connection and building that trust with one another that will really help when it comes to dealing with conflict when it does come up. So again, thank you so much, everybody. Okay. So let's now conflict. When we think about conflict, it is a difference in opinion, and then we add emotion to it. That becomes a conflict. And a disagreement is a difference in opinion. And when we don't, actively work on, the conflict component, it doesn't actually go away. Because a disagreement can very well turn into conflict, but again, without that work, without that understanding, without actively communicating with one another, that conflict really stays, and then it lingers for quite a bit of time. So one thing that I just want you to all think of a conflict that you've experienced this past year. When did it shift from a disagreement to a conflict? And as we go throughout this workshop, I just want you to consider some possible points of earlier intervention, or maybe some things that you may have done differently. So we're going to just talk through a bit of an example, and we're going to see how a simple disagreement can turn into a conflict. So let's imagine we have two coaches at a Nordic ski club. Now, one coach thinks athletes should focus on endurance training, where the other coach wants them to focus on adding more sprint work. Now, at first, it's just a difference in opinion. But if they stop communicating, they start making assumptions about one another's motives, and then they start discussing that with others instead of with the other coach, tension begins to grow. And then soon it becomes pretty personal. One coach might feel their ideas aren't being respected. The other might feel as though they're not being heard. And now the focus has shifted from a training plan to the relationship between the coaches itself. And this is essentially how a disagreement becomes a conflict. Again, when emotions, misunderstandings, or a lack of understanding begin to take over the issue themselves. And recognizing that shift really early on allows us to step in, have those conversations, be able to communicate with one another, and prevent it from escalating even further. And again, I can't stress this enough. Conflict really does not go away without that active work at this point. Let's take a look at a case study. Ross and Monica are coaches at the same equestrian facility, each running separate training programs that share the same arena and some riders. Disagreements have escalated over scheduling, equipment use, and coaching priorities. Ross insists his competitive riders should have priority arena time, whereas Monica believes all athletes deserve equal access regardless of their level. Now, the communication is broken down, and their tension is beginning to affect riders and parents. Both care deeply about the athlete's success and the reputation of the facility, but remain entrenched in their positions. The board president, Rachel, has requested mediation to help them find a constructive way forward. So I want you to think of, your role. So you are Rachel, you're the board president, and you've been requested to mediate the dispute in order to find a constructive way forward. So what are we gonna do about this? So I want you to keep this case study at the back of your mind because we will be coming back to it. Now let's talk a little bit about bias. Now, confirmation bias is when we question and interpret information as a confirmation of our own or our organization's existing beliefs or theories. And now there's many different types of bias, and that all these different types of bias can impact complaint management. And again, one of those being confirmation bias. So it's really important to be aware and consider your own biases and how it can impact your process when it comes to decision making. So we're going to go through a couple of biases, and they're just for fun. And a few of you I know have your cameras off, so maybe you could, if you feel comfortable, turn your cameras on. And when I bring out the statement, or when I mention the statement, please either turn your camera on or off if it applies, or leave your camera on if it doesn't apply. So turn your camera off if you are a cat person. Okay. Now let's turn your camera. Now everybody can turn their cameras back on. And let's turn your camera off if you're a dog person. Let's turn all the cameras back on. Now let's turn your cameras off if you're a Mariners fan. Now let's turn your cameras off if you're a Blue Jays fan. Lots of cameras going off for that one. Now, these may seem like some silly statements, but again, they are examples of biases. So either for a cat person, a dog person, who our favorite team is, these all play a part in the types of biases that we have. And again, these impact our decision-making process. And again, even in addition to how we deal with conflict. So what are some reasons for conflict and complaint? The insight approach is the foundation of the mediation model that was developed by Dr. Sherrill, and it was also shaped by philosophy of Bernard Lonergan. It focuses on understanding what is happening inside a person's thinking and feeling, and when they are in conflict, it uses the method that uses targeted curiosity. So asking thoughtful questions to uncover the beliefs, emotions, and the behaviors that or assumptions that drive that behavior. Now, by doing this, we help people see their own patterns of reaction and decision making. The goal is to open up new possibilities for understanding and change, both for ourselves as well as for others. Now, the insight approach isn't just about resolving conflict, it's about transforming how we value, act, and know any situation. So let's break it down between personal, practical, relational, and structural. So personal, it can feel like it challenges who we are and what we value. So an example of this could be a youth skier feels their performance was unfairly criticized during a club race. They believe the coach, quote unquote, didn't like them and feel embarrassed in front of their teammates. Practical. So something critical to our lives or goals is involved. So for example, maybe parents complain that practices are scheduled at times when many families are working and cannot attend. And that in return makes it difficult for youth to participate fully in club activities. Relational. Expectations about how people should interact in their roles. So for example, two club leaders have ongoing tension because one tends to make decisions without consulting the other. The frustration spills over into meetings. It creates discomfort for parents as well as the athletes. And then finally, we have structural. So questioning how systems are set up or working. And again, for example, a group of family raises concerns that leadership positions are always filled by the same small group of long-term volunteers, making it hard for new members to have a voice in club governance. Okay, so now we're going to go back to that case study that we talked about earlier. So one of the few things that maybe I can, because we have a small group today, maybe what we can discuss as a group is what possible, as Rachel, what possible biases could you be bringing into the mediation? And what is the possible reason for the complaint coming in to begin with?
I guess, uh, can you hear me? Great. I guess a practical one could be that everybody wants to ride after work or on weekends, right? So making that happen. And then I guess a personal bias as well could be like if Rachel's coming from sort of more of a competition background versus more of a pleasure background? Is that sort of answering the question at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of looking at it from the perspective of it could be very like practical again, right?
Yeah.
Giving everybody the time and the space to be able to practice
Mm-hmm.
the space that they need as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Wanda. Anybody else?
Lori, this was about their practice schedules or arena times?
Mhm.
I've forgotten already what it was about.
Yeah, it was about being able to get arena time for the equestrian club.
Okay, so this is a scheduling issue between two groups. Okay, I got you. Okay. Now it's coming back. Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's completely okay, Gord. We've gone through quite a few slides since then.
Yeah. Okay, so the complete, is there any more background in both groups, or is just a? I mean, I'd like to understand what the timings are, the size of the group, who's involved in the groups, how much of a pain these two coaches have been. How easy are they to work with? One-on-one, have they always had this dispute? Should this be a group meeting to discuss their issue, or is it a one-on-one? Or what are their personalities like?
Mhm. Yeah, it can be really helpful to have all of that information, or to at least come into that mediation given some context of the groups, because it helps you feel a little bit more prepared as well, definitely.
And I also think that being a coach myself, that it comes down to money. Like you're probably trying to run a business and you want to put in as many lessons and as many clients in as possible. And if you have somebody that you can't work with and there's only one arena,
Mhm.
that's a big challenge.
The bigger picture at that point, right? About
Mhm.
how is this actually going to impact everybody, and what are some of those bigger considerations that we need to be taking into consideration. Now, the nice thing about considering the different types of reasons for complaints allows us to be curious. So just like you're saying, Wanda and Gord, understanding the interests, which do really better equip us to, as sports individuals, kind of move through this process of these complaints and having these conflicts. So being able to have more context, being able to understand a bit more, takes us further. But at the same time, also just understanding that, our own biases could be playing a part in things too, and it could be impacting our overall process and our decision making as well. It could be impacting the coaches, and it could also just be impacting us as we're trying to help guide everybody through. So it's really coming back to just being fully aware and fully cognizant of that as well. Thank you. Okay. Now let's talk about understanding positions and interests. So, as a mediator myself, I mean, this is something that is the bread and butter of mediations, is really understanding where is Sarah coming from and where is Gord coming from, and how can we figure out what their underlying interests are to bring them together. And now mediation itself is really great in the sense that it helps shift people from that me versus you thinking to me and you thinking versus me and you versus the problem. It's a mindset change, right? So again, going from we're individuals to we're coming together to deal with something. It takes us from defending our position to working together to understand what's really happening. And when people begin to see the problem as the shared challenge and not each other, the space opens up for creativity, empathy, and resolution. Now, moving from positions to interests is really hard and it takes a lot of work. because, you know, one person could say, I want arena time, and the other person could say, I want arena time. But it's really about, okay, why is having arena time actually really important to you? What about that arena time is important? What else do you need? What's actually going, like, let's dig deeper. What's happening underneath for people to be able to actually discuss those interests? Maybe it has nothing to do with the arena time. Maybe it's about being able to give athletes more time because they know they need more practice, or maybe they're the ones expressing that there's a desire for this. So again, it's really about getting to the underlying issue and not just keeping it at that surface level. So when we move from positions to interests, it's really about how can we create an everybody win situation. So we really love this iceberg because when we look at the iceberg, that itself is the conflict. And when we look at the tip of the iceberg, so above water, those are going to be our positions. I like mango juice, you like apple juice. Those are going to be our positions. And then when we dig deep under the water, okay, well, what are interests? Why is mango and apple juice so important? What is it about that specific juice that is really important to you? And then when we start digging out those interests, we find out what's actually going to be really important to both people. And then we can dig that out to find solutions to our big conflict. And so, as a mediator, again, we come in and our job is to really define those interests, define those positions, and find those common interests. And then we can discuss problems and offer the solutions. Now, mediators come in as those impartial, neutral third parties. We're not there to, tell anybody what they should be doing. We're there to have that collaborative conversation to help people figure out, what's their conflict at the end of the day. And they are the ones that need to figure out their solutions, especially the solutions that work best for them. But as mediators, we come in and we help them get there. Mediation, I always tell my clients as well, it's not always a one and done. Sometimes it takes a few mediation sessions to really be able to unpack those interests and really dig deeper. Because mediation's hard, it's uncomfortable, it's not fun talking about conflict. But once we start getting there, and once we start really digging deeper, it's amazing as to how we can deal with that conflict and how we can really flourish in those situations. So Albert Einstein once said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. So when you hear this quote, or when you see this quote on your screen, how does this resonate for you? Or what do you think he's trying to really get at?
Maybe all the
He's
different
trying to
angles.
break.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. He's trying to break down the construct of the problem, understand it fully at its core and up through the whatever levels it has. And then he's going to give it to AI for 5 minutes and get a solution. There you go. Sorry, I'm being.
No worries, girl. We need a little bit of humor sometimes, right? Wanda?
No, I agree with Gord.
Yeah, perfect. Anybody else?
There are also, when you look at a problem, there are multiple angles and levels to look at any problem. And then 5 minutes thinking about solutions, depending on the problem. 5 minutes is not much time when there are a vast number of solutions, and it's forever if there's only one or two solutions in your mind.
Absolutely.
Or in my mind.
Absolutely.
So Albert, as smart as he was as a may have shortened the 5 minute thinking about solutions.
Yeah. And I also think that by collecting all the information that you can in that process, a solution will come out of that process. You can actually find a solution by finding all the different facets that go into the problem. And the solution will be self-evident in a lot of cases.
That would be nice.
In a perfect world.
Yes.
Anyone else? Now, really before we can even get to resolving a conflict, again, we do really need to figure out, we need to decide what that problem really is going to be. And figuring out what the problem is can be very time consuming. And it can be really tricky because Tina and I may be in a conflict, but we may not even agree on what the main problem is. So getting to that, what is the actual issue here can actually take quite a bit of work and quite a bit of time. So I really appreciate everybody's thoughts on this quote. And one way that I always see it is, preparation has a great value to problem solving as well. So spending 55 minutes might seem absurd because we only have 5 minutes left to deal with the solution. But when we're preparing ourselves to be able to deal with the solution, that could be really helpful as well. And that might actually help us get to that solution a little bit quicker. And one thing that I actually want to go back to is, Gord, you brought up AI. And so we are actually I'm going to bring that up in a little bit in terms of kind of how AI and the way we communicate impacts our conflict and can really make it really worse in some situations as well. Let's break it down. Let's talk about how can we frame the problem. And how we frame a problem really shapes the kind of conversations that follow after. So when we use questions and we're not stating things, we invite a lot of curiosity and we take away the defensiveness. What led to this decision feels very different from, Sarah, you should not have done that. Using positive language helps people stay very open, very engaged, and it focuses on what can be done instead of what actually went wrong. And we also want to be able to challenge those assumptions, ours, others, and we want to ask ourselves, what makes us think that something else could potentially be going on here, or what else could be going on in this situation? So rather than just assuming, well, so and so just doesn't want to do something, well, actually, what could be going on for them that's impacting the situation at this point? Again, getting curious, not jumping to what we think is going on. And when we change our language and we avoid subjective language, when we're not saying words like always, never, or unfair, those subjective words really close down dialogue and they close down that conversation. Because when we're hearing, you're always late, you're never on time, this is so unfair that I'm not getting practice time, that's very subjective, and there's really no room for a conversation to happen there. So switching our words, switching our language, and inviting more objective language can make it a lot easier to, again, have that conversation continue to flow. And when we frame the problem in a way that helps shift the focus from blame to understanding, it actually opens up a lot more room for us to be able to find those resolutions. And again, we go back to that, what are those common interests between the parties involved? So we're going to go through a couple of examples here. So at the very top, our board is toxic. So how about we shift that and we say something along the lines of, how can we make our board work more effectively? Because at the top, saying our board is toxic is a very loaded statement. Excuse me. It labels people and it really leaves little to no room for constructive dialogue to be happening. Then we have Now, when we shift it, we say, how can we make our board work more effectively? Now it's actually opening up question. There's room for ideas to start flowing. There's collaboration being allowed instead of just saying our board is toxic and now we're blaming our entire board. Then we have decision making is biased. So that points quite a bit of fingers. Now we could ask, how can we make decision making transparent and understandable? That keeps the focus on improvement, not just making accusations. And then finally, we have our coach breach the code of conduct. Now, we might want to ask, what is our coach's understanding of the code of conduct? Because that can open the door to dialogue and learning, because maybe there's a misunderstanding about the code of conduct. Maybe everyone is interpreting it differently. Maybe there needs to be a policy change or a shift in terms of what the actual wording should be so that it's very clear for everybody and there's no gray area. And then when we shift our language, and again, there's that door to have that dialogue and have that communication, we're still addressing the main concern, but we're not being very subjective. And again, we're not being very accusatory. So one really big takeaway when we're talking about framing the problem is you want to frame the problem as a question. So, and not just judge, and not as it's a judgment. When we frame it as when we frame the problem as a question, it keeps people engaged, it reduces defensiveness, and it makes it easier to find solution. So now, one thing that I just want everybody, maybe I'll give everybody about a minute to just think about this, and we won't open it up for dialogue, but I would love for you guys to just spend a minute to think about it, is think of a conflict or a challenge that you've seen in your own setting. Rather than in sports, it could be at work. How might you reframe the problem into an open question that shifts the conversation towards solution? Again, we want it to be, how can we make it so that's actually, there's a lot of curiosity and then there's collaboration being invited into it. So maybe I'll give everybody a minute to just think about that and then we'll move on. Let's go back to the iceberg and let's talk about, go over a case scenario. Bring all of this up. Okay. So Sarah and I are going on a road trip. So Sarah's come down and we're going to Aldergrove. So during the ride from North Delta to Aldergrove, Sarah wants to keep the windows up, whereas I would very much rather keep the windows down. So the big issue interests here are, so Sarah's issues or interests are that she wants to keep the windows up because she wants to stay warm. Maybe the pressure from the air hurts her ears. Maybe she had a really great hair day and she does not want the wind to ruin her hair. And she wants to be comfortable on the drive. Now, on the flip side, I want the windows to be down. Maybe it's because I have allergies. I get really car sick, so keeping the windows down actually makes it a lot easier for me. Maybe there is an old sandwich that's left in the back seat and it's not smelling so good. And I also want to be comfortable on the drive. So the big issue here is, how are each of us going to be comfortable on this drive? And how are we going to be comfortable on this drive together? So taking into consideration what our interests are and taking into consideration what the big picture issue is, what are some options or ideas that you think you could throw out for me and Sarah?
Well, your common interest is being comfortable, and one of you gets car sick. So I would suggest whoever gets car sick drives, because you're less likely to get car sick. Sarah wants to stay warm. Well, maybe somebody brings a blanket or an extra jacket for her. And maybe the window on Sarah's side is up all the way, and maybe Suki's is down a little bit. And somebody get rid of the sandwich in the back of the car.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah.
Thanks, Wanda. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would agree with Wanda. There are several things there that can be done to make everybody comfortable. Changing positions and certainly getting rid of the old sandwich, that would be a great idea. And you know, there are ways in different places in the car that both could become comfortable on their drive. So yeah, it's just working together, isn't it?
Exactly. Thanks, Tina. So yeah, really to reiterate a few of the ideas that you guys have shared. So take turns maybe having the windows open and closed. Maybe we choose certain windows are left open. Or maybe they're open a small amount. Maybe we use the vents to help with the heat and the circulation. Maybe we change seats in the car. So maybe if I'm the one getting car sick, maybe I am the one that drives, so it's easier for me. A big one, I think it's really important that we throw that sandwich out. Maybe if Sarah's getting cold and she just really wants to stay warm, maybe it's about getting Sarah a jacket or a blanket. Maybe I need to take an allergy pill. Or maybe a motion sickness medication. And to protect Sarah's hair, maybe she wears a hat. So really, when we're able to take two different perspectives and say, again, I want the windows up, you want the windows down, but we start to really break it down. Why is it that the windows are so important to us, or having them up or down? We're able to really break it down. Where am I coming from, and where is Sarah coming from? And ultimately, what's important to the both of us? It really isn't about, staying warm or having allergies. It's about our overall comfort on the drive from Delta to Aldegrove. So when we're able to get to that piece of, okay, so this is actually what's really important to the both of you, that's our common interest, we're able to take that interest and we're able to say, okay, so how can each of us be comfortable? And what can be done in order to ensure that happens for us? Any questions so far about the iceberg and how to dig out the positions and the interest?
I find this interesting, but this is a very, I don't know, for me, a very easy solution.
Absolutely.
For the most part. So I'm a little bit more interested in tougher conflicts.
Absolutely. It's at a very surface level. Again, this is very simple. It's easy to digest. But when we are having those tougher conflicts, it's harder to get to what the main issue is and what the interests are. Because usually when we're in those conflict situations where it's not as simple as up or down for the windows, and it's a lot bigger, we're very rooted in our position. We're very rooted in why I believe something should be my way versus Wanda, you believing something should be your way. And for example, I work quite a bit with parents and families. And so when we're mediating parenting agreements, for example, it's about, okay, well, what is actually important to each of you? Because, we're already going through really tough situations as it is, that's led you here. But what is very important? And getting to that point, and that's kind of why I say mediation isn't always a one and done. Because when we're trying to dig up those common interests, that can take us a really long time. And it's not fun. It's very uncomfortable because we can get it wrong. We can absolutely get it wrong. We may think that Sarah's interest is, you know, having her hair not ruined, but there might be something more to it. So what is it? And that's usually when we also see the feelings come out and the fears come out. And it could be fears of, you know, again, not wanting to fail, or it's deeper than that. And so again, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of practice to be able to get to those common interests, to be able to even to get to the point of brainstorming and finding things that would work for all the parties that are involved. So let's go back to, I'm going to go back a couple slides. Let's go back to our case study. It'll be a little bit easier if we're able to see it. So again, we have Ross and Monica. So what I want everybody to do is I'll give everybody maybe about 3 to 4 minutes to do this. Is if you have a paper handy, that's great, or if you're able to do it on your phone or your laptop, is draw out the iceberg if it's easier for you to visualize it. But let's break down, you know, what are the positions? What are some of the interests? And let's try and find what some of those shared interests could be. And then I'm going to encourage you to, if you're able to get to the shared interests, to be able to write what an issue could be using neutral language. And again, I just want to confirm everybody can see my screen okay?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. So it's 7:48. Actually, I'll give everybody about 5 minutes to be able to do this.
So when you say shared interests, you mean what they're both trying to achieve?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. How's everybody doing? Still needing another minute or so? Okay. So for everyone, hopefully that was enough time. I know but 4 or 5 minutes usually isn't enough. So I do apologize for that. But for the sake of time, I'd love to hear what some of everyone's thoughts were. I'm gonna bring it back to the main slide. So what were some of the positions in this situation with Ross and Monica?
Okay, so I can say some shared interests if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so they're both trying to maintain or grow their business. They're both trying to make money. They're both trying to keep their clients and parents happy. I'm hoping keeping a safe environment. Have owners and clients respect their knowledge and experience. I would also say lifestyle, because we all want to do things between 9 and 5 in a day, most likely. I would say they also want to maintain a good environment or vibe in their barn, which keeps people there. They also want to teach effectively, which would make me think like if somebody leaves equipment in the way after a lesson, makes it harder for somebody else to do maybe a different discipline. And we're both trying to maximize the best use of their time. So maybe putting jumps up and taking jumps down every day is not the best use of someone's time.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Wanda. Gord, Tina, I saw you guys on mute.
Oh, Rachel also has some skin in this game. She needs to protect the center itself, from, well, this dispute is I'm sure not putting the center in a good light. And so she has to understand that, it's not just two coaches bickering about timing. It's the reputation of the center. As for the bickering and whatnot, yes, scheduling's, I guess, always an issue there. I don't know. And I assume the coaches don't schedule their own hours. I'm assuming Rachel or someone else does. Someone owns the facility. And sounds like that's Rachel or some group of folks. So, and to Wanda's points, yeah, they have a many common factors that they would not want ruined by this dispute. And it sounds like it's getting to the point where it is becoming a problem. So, you know, I don't know. You'd have to know a lot more about the levels, the number of kids, the number of hours that they need, the timing that they're both having conflicts with. And look at it together with them and have them move away from their trench positions. And whoever doesn't is probably gone. But you can't let this fester anymore. So, yeah, I agree with Wanda.
Thanks, Gord.
Yeah.
Tina.
Yeah, I think the basic conflict is scheduling. So that's the main area of focus with all three parties is identifying the use of the arena that will benefit both parties. And I think many of the points were made by Gordon and Wanda that different groups need to be looked at, and all parties need to have a say in this and put forward their positions, and then work together as a party to come up with a solution that will fit everybody's needs.
So when we're talking about the issue, the big issue is it really comes down to the scheduling, because that seems like what's causing the issue between Ross and Rachel. So rather than just saying scheduling is an issue, how can we frame the issue in a neutral language? So how can we frame that? How can we say it's scheduling without saying scheduling's the root of the problem?
Well, I would want to know if, like, from somebody who deals with this, there are certain competition riders that can easily do exercises that could be done at the same time as, say, more recreational riders or beginner riders. Like, not every lesson has to be a full-on jumping lesson. We need the whole arena and we're going really fast. So finding that solution in those times, you know, and understanding that there's going to have to be compromise on both sides, which is challenging sometimes. That would be one thing I would say. And I would also say, from, again, a business perspective, maybe from Rachel's side of things, if it's a business, who has more horses there? Who's bringing more money into the business? And who has more clients that have horses there, and that's going to actually further grow the facility potentially, versus, I don't know, depends on what Rachel's outcome or business projections are.
And I would say that instead of using the word scheduling, how about saying, how can we work together to optimize arena use?
Great.
Yeah, I was going to say to phrase it, that how can we manage use of the arena to meet the needs of all riders? Because one thing that popped into my head was, are there other users? What about, are there open riding times that also need to be taken into account? And on top of all the other points that have already been raised.
Amazing. Thanks, Joan. Anyone else? Now, I mean, even just taking this scenario, I mean, we could really break it down, and we could take about an hour just really try to pick all the pieces out and figure out what the positions and the interests are and what the big issue is. But with really in about 5 minutes, all of you did so great in terms of trying to extract, and even just to get to the point of how can we make this work for everybody, and even getting to the point of, you know, business. How can we think about it from a business level? Like, who is bringing more riders in, or how is this impacting the facility, or how can the facility actually flourish? Is really fantastic to be able to actually start thinking broader picture and not just fighting over the space at that time. So really great work. Again, it's not when conflict comes up, and I find myself in these situations as well, as when I'm in mediation, we don't always have the capacity or the time to sit there, draw the iceberg out, right? But something that really helps me is, if we are in having a mediation, or for having that communication dialogue, is actually starting to write down, maybe not in an iceberg method, but writing down, okay, Joan wants XYZ. Tina needs XYZ, and then breaking that down. Sometimes being able to visually see it, or at least to be able to see the words, helps us move forward and helps us progress. And especially when we're not able to deal with a conflict within an hour or two, and we need more time to come back to it, having something in writing, or just having something that we can come back to, can be really helpful. And we can pick back up from where we're left off. So we're going to be talking about interpersonal communication for success, and we're going to be talking about the difference between verbal and nonverbal communication. Now, again, as we all know, verbal communication really is words that are spoken and written. And that nonverbal communication is the communication that doesn't involve words. So, for example, body language, tone of voice, sounds going, okay. And as you may all have noticed, I speak with my hands a lot. And so this is a part of my body language and my communication style where I can't sit still. So I do speak with my hands quite a bit. So when we gather information and we have to have those tricky conversations and that communication, there's a lot that we need to consider. And so we really need to start by considering communication as a whole. So now, when we're thinking about, again, verbal versus nonverbal, there is a lot of significant body of research about the impact and of the importance of nonverbal communication. And it's been found through a lot of findings that 55% of communication really is our body language. 38% is your tone, and 7% is actually the words that we say. And then we have a little bit of a percentage left over, including like with eye rolling and tone of voice, again, all of those things, and our posture, all of those are also nonverbal communicators that can also indicate conflict. Because if I'm rolling my eyes, I'm saying, Sarah said what? Or my voice is getting higher, or my voice is getting really low, again, and my posture, I'm pulling back, I'm kind of shutting off, I'm not as open anymore. That could be leading us all to, okay, there's a bigger problem here and there's some issue. Now, when we're having face-to-face verbal communication, typically that's not very problematic. As we can see, nonverbal cues, and we can consider them. I can see Tina looking away. I can see Wanda pulling back and maybe speaking to somebody else. Or we're fidgeting with our pens and we're starting to zone out. We're able to notice these things when we're on screen like this or we're in person. And when we're able to see these nonverbal cues, that helps us not just avoid the situation, and it actually helps us work through the disagreement. And even in mediation, one thing that I really love doing is if I'm noticing somebody pull back or just, their posture has changed, they're kind of looking away from me, they're not really engaging as how they were, I always like to check in, often one-on-one, often within the group, and just say, hey, I'm really noticing a shift. What's going on for you? What's happening in this moment? How can I bring you back? And now when we're talking about phone communication, even though that's absolutely verbal, you can hear my voice go up and down, you can actually hear the words, it's not really as effective as being able to talk face to face with one another. Yes, we can hear the phone, the tone, and we're able to engage back and forth. But when we're really trying to figure out conflict and we're trying to deal with it, the biggest devastating impact is written verbal communication, because you're just writing things down and you're not actually being able to decipher things, and you're not able to actually communicate fully. And face-to-face communication, being able to actually sit down with Joan and saying, okay, this is how I'm feeling. The arena, I need scheduling, we need to figure all of this out. I need more time, you need more time. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to have these conversations, but it's really important for long-term success. And when we talk about email and texting, now those are our written words, but email and texting is not very helpful when it comes to successfully being able to deal with conflict. Now, we believe it's one of, or if not the biggest contributor to unsuccessful conflict resolution on teams, because things can get misinterpreted. I may say something to you and say, hey, oh, okay, fine, you can have the arena tomorrow from 9 to 10. But you may read that as, oh, well, Suki, why is Suki saying it like that? Is where is it coming from? So when we're unable to actually hear the tone of voice, we're able to see the nonverbal, we're able to actually communicate face to face, we can really interpret it very differently. And that disagreement could very well escalate into a conflict if we're just texting one another and we're just emailing one another. How does everybody feel about texts and emails?
I think
They
that,
are,
go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, text and email are ubiquitous with current life.
Mhm.
They're there, they're gonna stay.
Yep.
And you need to be careful with them.
Mhm.
Having someone, if it's a particularly incendiary email, you might want to sit on it, have somebody read it, and give you some feedback. And texting, no, texting's just a blast. I'm not a big fan of it, but yeah, about 2 texts and then it's on the phone.
Mhm. Perfect.
Yeah, I completely agree with Gord. I think he's on the money with, yeah, texts are for like I'm late or
Yeah.
something like that. But I do feel that having a conversation and then following up with whether it's text or email saying, okay, I understand that this is what we talked about and agreed to. Do you agree or did I miss something? Because I find sometimes there's face-to-face conversations and then you come back maybe 2 weeks later and that person's like, oh, I didn't say that, or we didn't agree to this. And you're like, oh, wah, wah, wah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll agree with Wanda. I believe in a phone call and then following up with an email just to make sure we've got everything clear.
Absolutely. And being able to follow up with that email is actually really great because we're able to say, okay, so Wanda, based on our conversation today, we discussed XYZ. It can be in bullet points. And we're moving forward, we're going to do XYZ. And we're able to have a further conversation if Wanda's like, actually, no, in that email, that's not what I said. And then we go back to that communication in person or over the phone, ideally in person, to say, okay, where did I misunderstand you? Or what did I misinterpret? Because that's something that over texting and email, things can get misinterpreted, things can get lost. And we don't always want to be able to, we don't always feel comfortable talking to the other person about where did we both go wrong? Or where did I go wrong? Where did you go wrong? But again, it's really important that we always keep that focus on having that initial conversation and all those follow-up conversations as well, really together. And again, it's uncomfortable because depending on the conflict, emotions can come up. And we may feel uncomfortable with dealing with someone that's upset or angry or frustrated. But it's about allowing yourself to have that space to allow those emotions and to have those emotions, but also understanding conflict isn't fun for anybody. It's very uncomfortable. And so these emotions are bound to come up, but it's important that we work through them together. Because if we don't, the conflict's not going to go away and it's most likely just going to keep escalating. So the quicker we're able to have these conversations, the quicker we're able to say, okay, this is what's going on for me, that's what's going on for you, what needs to happen, what needs to change. And we're able to, again, communicate effectively, we're able to really deal with that conflict appropriately. Now, there's a few things. So a couple of things to ask yourself before you email, you text, or you DM somebody. One, is it important? Two, do you need to apologize? Three, have you waited too long to respond? Has it been over 48 hours? Four, do you anticipate there to be follow-up questions? Is it complicated? And is it personal? If we're saying, yes, this is an important conversation, yes, I may have misunderstood something and I should be the one apologizing to Tina. Oh, it's been a long time and I did not respond to Gord. And I know Wanda's going to have follow-up questions. And this whole situation in general, it's complicated and it's personal. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this over text or email. Again, maybe we should be going to, hey, let's set up a time where you and I can chat. What works for you? Maybe we go to the Starbucks, maybe we go to Portland's, maybe we have a Zoom call, or maybe we just meet right after practice at the arena and let's have a conversation and let's figure things out. Now, one thing actually I'll talk about this here. So I'd love to do this activity with everybody. It's a very fun activity, and it's an activity that can be very eye-opening in the sense of how we perceive text messages and emails. So if there is anybody that would kindly volunteer to read a text message, it can be anything. It can be very small. It doesn't have to be anything too personal. But I would love for you to be able to read that text in 3 different tones.
Hmm.
What text are you talking about?
Just any text that you've received to share with the group.
I wonder if I can even do that.
Okay, so this is from, am I reading a text that I sent or a text that I got?
Either or.
Okay, so this is one from a client. So I'm reading it in 3 different tones to everyone. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Wanda. Forecast is looking really yucky, so please let me know ASAP Sunday if you think we need to cancel. Hi, Wanda. Forecast is looking really yucky, so please let me know ASAP Sunday if you think we need to cancel. Hey, Wanda. Forecast is looking really yucky, so please let me know ASAP Sunday if you think we need to cancel.
Amazing. Thanks, Wanda.
Job.
Anybody else like to share? Let me pull up a message. All right. Okay, so this is a text that I received from a friend of mine. She's in her terrible 2 era. She's in her terrible 2 era. She's in her terrible 2 era. Now, one thing I always bring up when we do this is I learned from a few teenagers in my life that I'm not allowed to text them the letter K. And I definitely am not allowed to add a period at the end of that K. Because the way they perceive it is if they ask me a question or they say something like, hey, we're coming over or something, and I say K, apparently that's coming across as very angry, and it's coming across as I'm mad at them. So really, when we're doing this activity, or we're reading tones in different ways, it's really about what's going on for us in that moment. What are we in a happy mood? Are we frustrated? Are we just, we're just kind of coasting through the day? But the way our emotions are impacting how we read that message, it can really impact, okay, now is this a fight? Are we arguing? Is this a disagreement? Are we in a conflict right now? Because I may say something as, again, very simple as, oh, she's in her terrible 2s, but I could take that as oh, she's in her terrible 2s? Like, what? And so again, it really just comes down to, we lose the impact, we lose the emotion when we're just sending text messages. And again, there's so many hidden meanings in text messages these days about, again, not saying K, or have emojis so that you really are expressing yourself, and so that the other person knows, okay, if you're saying okay, it's not because you're just mad, it's okay, like, and you add a smiley face, and okay, you're happy that someone's coming over. And so texting is definitely it's changed quite a bit, and the way we perceive these messages and how we even interpret them. And so that's why, as old school as it may be, going back to being able to have these conversations in person is so much more effective than writing it down and just sending it off.
Okay,
May I
so
ask a question?
how does one stay abreast of the evolving texting the dialogue. Because
Oh,
I thought K meant okay.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
I think it's the new way of texting. We may never be able to stay on top of it. And I think it's
Okay.
something that we'll just always have to learn from the other ones. Um, but again,
So I have to find a 13-year-old mentor.
Oh, God.
explain what all these
I,
hidden meanings are.
I
But
mean, I do remember that in the early days that you had to have a young mentor because they knew all this stuff. Okay.
and again, we may never really be able to stay on top of, again, being able to add these emojis or not adding periods because it comes across to the other person as maybe it's we're angry at them for whatever reason. But again, it really just comes down to when we send a message, the other person could very well be in a state and they may be going through something that we may not know. And so they may perceive a message
No,
and take it a different way as well.
I have 2 teenage granddaughters, so they will teach me all this now.
Amazing.
Okay.
I have 2 questions.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you, so sometimes I get texts or emails and they're sort of passive aggressive, and I instantly, my back goes up and I just don't respond to those at all. I just ignore them. And then my other question is I deal with a lot of teenagers, and I will sometimes get texts that are so unstructured, like it's just one run on thought, no sentences, and they are incoherent. And I immediately again get my back up because I'm like, you're not a stupid person, but you come off as a stupid person. And how to respond to them, because I think that's how they communicate with their peers. But I'm also in a coaching or sort of mentoring environment or position, and be like, listen, you come off as an idiot. How to somewhat tactfully say, don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, so when messages are coming off as passive aggressive, and again, we are feeling like, oh, where is this person coming from? I, in those moments, always encourage a phone call. And I do this with emails as well that I receive. If I don't really know where the person is coming from, or I don't know the thought process or the emotions behind it, I just say, hey, love to just have a chat with you about this rather than continuing the conversation over text message. Um,
Mhm.
again, then we're able to clarify, like, hey, I actually was just wondering where you were coming from with your message, what's going on. Can you please give me more context?
And I find sometimes if I do that, that person chickens out and doesn't call me.
Right. I mean, we can't really force people into having conversations with us, right? But it's about initiating that and saying, hey, I'm just really confused, or hey, I'm just not really understanding this. Love to actually just be able to have a conversation so we're able to clear it up. It opens the door. We're not making assumptions for kind of what's going on for them, or what they may be implying or what they may be meaning. But again, it's opening up those doors to continue that dialogue and say, okay, so where are you coming from? What's going on for you? The other person doesn't want to have that conversation, then I usually just say, then you kind of just leave it at that.
Mhm.
And then kind of move on to the next one. Because we can never force somebody to have a conversation with us or to clarify what's going on. But as long as you open those doors and you're willing to have that conversation, it really allows them to feel safe. And it kind of goes back to that connection building piece, right? When we're able to create safety and create that time to get to know one another, we're able to, again, we're more comfortable to be able to have these conversations to begin with.
Mhm.
Now with the teenagers, that one's a little bit of a tricky one. Um, Now, in some situations, it could just be about having conversations about guidelines with text messages, especially if as athletes, they're messaging you certain things as their mentor and their coach. It could just be about, having group guidelines about how do we text one another so that it's coming across as, um, this is the standard. This way it kind of makes sense to everybody. Everyone is on the same page. And, one may text a peer one way, but it might not be appropriate to text a mentor or coach the same way. So creating guidelines in terms of, hey, texting is great, but we need a few things in place so that everyone understands the messaging and there's no confusion. And no one is coming across as, for lack of better words, stupid. But it's like, okay, they're able to actually articulate and just share what's going on for them. And so it could be really helpful to, at your next meeting, when you have your team, to say, okay, what does everybody need? This would really work for me. Maybe it's just about sentences. We just have a sentence structure so that I'm able to follow your thought process clearly as well.
Okay, thank you.
And it's uncomfortable, and especially with teenagers involved. But I mean, it's a start for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so being mindful of time, what I might do is, Sarah, there is a video, I might just send it to you so that you can share it with the group. It really is about text messages, how we may be interpreting text messages, and how it can go very wrong. So it's a short clip, but again, just being mindful of time. I'll get Sarah to email that off to everybody. I hope you all take about 2 minutes to watch it. Again, it's a very fun way of looking at how messages can be interpreted very poorly, with quite a bit of humor attached to it. Okay. So going back to how I'd acknowledge, or how I'd addressed, when we are talking and we're having communication, we're trying to deal with conflict, emotion. What if somebody started crying? What if somebody gets upset? And typically, one of the main reasons that people actually avoid face-to-face communication is because of the emotions that are attached to it. And again, it's really important to normalize emotion, and it's okay for these emotions to come out. It's absolutely uncomfortable, but it's about creating safety for yourself and the other person to have the space and the time. And when emotions are coming up and we're dealing with conflict, it could very well just be saying, hey, Sarah, maybe do you need a couple minutes? Like, should I just step out for a couple seconds? And then we can reconvene. Creating that safety, giving that person that space, and then coming back to be able to address that emotion and to be able to address that conflict. Because where is that emotion coming from? And what is our conflict? And what's actually going on here is really great for us to be able to figure out, okay, where do we need to go and how can we address this? Now, one great way is having a tricky conversation starter kit. And again, this isn't foolproof, because in conflict situations, we may not want to go through this tricky conversation script, or it may feel kind of uncomfortable to do so. But it's a great way to be able to actually start these conversations and to build that comfortability with it as well. So very first off, if you are bringing somebody in or you're meeting with someone and it's just about saying, hey, Gord, thanks for reaching out and for supporting your athlete. And hey, thank you for actually meeting with me today as well. Describe the issue, describe what's going on. So I heard that you're concerned about your athlete not moving up. The decision was based on meeting skill-specific requirements. Touch on the feeling. And this is really important because we don't want to say, Wanda feels, it's about me. So I feel really worried this may have come across as unfair or isolating. And I want to be sure your athlete feels supported and that we're all on the same page. Now, could it be possible that we meet after practice to review the criteria and we plan next steps together? So breaking it down, again, acknowledging the other person, thanking them for their time, and thanking them for the work that they're doing. Describe what's going on for you. Describe the situation. Again, not putting words and saying, your athletes aren't moving up, or there's things in place, there's policies in place, and just actually being a little bit more softer about it. When we're describing the feeling, it's important to acknowledge it with I feel worried. How is this impacting me? you know, I'm worried that this may be coming across, or I feel really upset that this is happening. And what is the need ultimately? You know, I do really want your athletes to feel supported and for everybody to be on the same page. And then that finally ending with that request. Can we get together? Can we figure something out? Now, this 5-step approach, it again breaks things down. And you might not get through everything in the first little bit that you're having a conversation, but just starting off with, okay, let's just acknowledge and thank the person. It brings people's guards down. It also helps them feel seen and heard. And then slowly explaining everything in a very again, non-confrontational manner. Now, of course, when it comes to conflict, the learning process is never finished until, and even when we acquire knowledge, it's complete when you consistently apply that knowledge. And so, in this situation, when conflict is coming up, consistently applying the tools that you've learned today. And many people accumulate information, they far fewer use it to evolve and improve. And the ultimate test of growth is closing the gap between awareness and action. Now, again, conflict really is one of those things where you may never get comfortable with it, and that's absolutely okay. It's one of those things where it's tricky, but it's just about having a few tools in your back pocket to be able to adequately have these conversations and to be able to at least, again, communicate effectively to minimize having conflict escalate. So again, I'll just quickly end off with a little bit about now what. So again, we offer conflict coaching and early intervention. We do offer mediation and collaborative planning facilitation. We offer quite a few workshops just like this. And we offer quite a bit of organizational support as well around policy development, investigation, arbitration, and cultural audits as well. Our goal really is to help build healthier support communities out there. Now, I know that it's right at 8:30, and so again, I really want to thank everybody for their time this evening. I will ask Sarah to send out a survey for everybody. Again, there's no pressure to complete it, but it's just about kind of what you took away from today. And then I will also email Sarah the video to watch as well. So I truly hope you watch that. Before we go though, does anybody have any questions for me?
It was great. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks so much, Wanda.
Yep.
Thank you, Gord. Well, again,
Have a good one.
Thank you. You as well. Again, I really appreciate everybody joining this evening, and don't hesitate to reach out if you ever have any questions.
Thank you, Suki. Very good.
Thank
It was
you.
very useful. Yeah, it's very helpful.
Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks guys. Good seeing you guys again. And yeah, thanks so much, Suki, for all your knowledge and information on conflict process and everything. And so yeah, it was a great webinar. And yeah, lots of great information. So yeah, thanks again. And yeah, I think that's all for now. But yeah, have a good night, everybody.
Amazing.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care. Bye.